what's your place in the universe, which is basically your place in the story, right? And how do you maintain that place? So basically, what do I think of myself? Well, I think of myself as a father, as a husband, as a retired Army person, as a son, and grandson of people that are all dead now, but still in my memory. I mean, all those things you can think of as yourself, a U.S. citizen, right? All the things, a citizen of the world, etc. Right? A walking ecosystem for millions or billions of different bacteria. I'm that too, right? I'm symbiotic with them. I need them. You don't want to kill them. If you've taken antibiotics, that kind of screws up your whole system, and you got to restart. All the different little animals that live in you. That kind of problem. But so, studying philosophy could be dangerous, and we see that happening with especially the school of thought called existentialism, which is a kind of a postmodern group of philosophers, many of whom are very, very depressing. You've probably heard of Camus and Kierkegaard. I have a warning sign. When I'm going to talk about Kierkegaard, I have a warning. Warning. Reading the following philosopher could be dangerous to your mental health, because he's so lost himself, and he expresses it so well. I remember one year I had a student who was healthy looking, shaved, came to class and everything, really interested in everything. We got up to Kierkegaard and it just hit him. And a couple of years later, I saw him walking on campus. He was wearing a black trench coat, and he looked all sallow and dark circles under his eyes and stubble all over his face, and he was not really looking where he was going. And I said to him, "Are you still reading Kierkegaard?" He said, "I can't get enough of him." I said, "Stop! Start reading the pragmatists. Anything, get off of Kierkegaard. It'll kill you,
Wait, I have a question. You said the three things, who am I? The three questions you said are, if you don't know who it is about you, or if you don't know those three questions, or if you do know those three questions, is likely to.
Okay, so.
What did you say?
Okay, so this is from Peter Berger.
Okay.
Not, but everything I say is coming from somebody else.
Yeah.
Whether I succeed in quoting them or citing them or whatever. And even if I screw up, that's because I didn't quote them correctly, but I try. But Peter Berger was a sociologist of knowledge who also died not too long ago, 90-something, absolutely amazing character. Wrote tons of books. I ought to throw this up here real quick so you can see who he is. And in his, actually in multiple books of his, he points out that the answers that we especially need as human beings is to answer the question, number one, who am I? Because I need to know my identity. Who am I, right? A lot of cultures, people aren't worried about that. They know who they are. It never occurs to them to doubt who they are. But in the weird societies, remember they're Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. You have this kind of education that gives you a history of thought, as I'm doing to you here, right? And once you get that kind of history, you realize how thought has evolved and changed from one generation to the next, etc. And once you get to that, you realize, well, they used to think this about who they were. And And then the next generation thought this. And then this generation thought this. And it kept changing. I mean, drastic changes in the way they perceive the universe. For example, let me ask you this. This will be the quiz question today. Please email me your response to this quiz question. Does the Earth go around the sun, or does the sun go around the Earth? Show of hands. Who thinks that the Earth goes around the sun? Everybody that's, yeah, everybody. No one disagrees. Wow, that's amazing. So I won't ask who thinks that the sun goes around the Earth. But if, let's see, I could either look it up, or I could just go to my notes. But I'll go ahead and look it up. Solar system moving through space. Okay, this is really silly, but let's solar system is moving. So how does that actually affect all the planets going around the sun? They're not really going in a circle around the sun. They're moving along with the sun in its trajectory. Kind of a wave. You see how that is? So how does that affect your feeling about the Earth? It's a trick question, right? Wouldn't you say? So what if you started thinking, no, it's not true that the Earth goes around the sun. I mean, if we tried to go around a stationary point in space and everything just kept going, we'd be all alone, sitting out in space with nothing to go around, right? And of course, the ancients, the Mayans, one of the reasons they thought, that the entire universe? I forget what they were saying would collapse. Probably just the Earth would collapse after a certain period, but then recycle, and begin again. Well, it actually does, because every 250 million years approximately, we go around the galaxy, right? And so the background stars are all changing constantly as we go, right? So, and so there's lots of calendars where the ancients tried to figure this out, etc., right? But there's also interesting reasons why it's much more useful to think of the Earth as stationary. So, as far as I understand it, astronomers, when they're looking for planets that are on other solar systems, they assume a stationary Earth, because that way they're only trying to calculate the movement of those stars, as opposed to trying to figure out where's the Earth at the moment, plus where they are. So you've got much more calculations to do. So it's actually still useful to think of the Earth as stationary. And we talk about it that way all the time. If you're driving down the Glen Highway and you're thinking, the Earth is turning at how many miles an hour, in its rotation, and I'm trying to stay on the Earth, not really a problem, right? But if you're imagining, how you view the universe, that everything is moving, and I'm trying to guide the car, along the road that's traveling, and so I mean, it's just impossible, right, to think about it. And then we discover, thanks to Einstein, that gravity, Sir Isaac Newton, right? I should ask this as a follow-up question, right? Do you believe in gravity? If so, what is it? Newton invented it, apparently, right? Well, gravitas means heavy, and so, Aristotle thought everything fell, that falls, because everything moves to its home. It's the place it wants to be, right? So things move to get to where they want to be, right? That's what Aristotle thought. Well, Newton gives us gravity because of the way he kind of added to Galileo's calculations and came up with a definition of gravity, right? But there was no explanation of where this force came from, right? Along comes Einstein, and if you're familiar, theory of relativity, etc., the reason that we are kind of held to the Earth is because, say for me, the motion that I'm following in the universe is almost parallel to the motion that the Earth is following, and it actually brings me into contact with the Earth just enough that it gives me what appears to be 1g of force, right? 1 gravity. That's the definition of 1g is because of that calculation, right? But actually, the reason that I feel that I'm not moving out of this chair is because the Earth is accelerating me at the force of 1g. So it's because of relative motion that we have things like gravity, etc. So notice my understanding of my place in the universe has shifted. Because when I was a kid, I didn't have any idea about how gravity wasn't a real thing. I was raised with the model of the planets going around the sun, etc. In fact, I did the same thing with my kids when they were in school. We made a beautiful model of the sun with the planets. Brought a big paper mache deal, all that stuff. Had fun doing that. And now I realize, wait a minute, what am I doing? I'm teaching them the old model that went away back in 1908 or thereabouts, right? Whoa, anime, my identity. And one of the things that Bruno Latour is famous for, and the reason he got the Kyoto Prize and gave the lecture, if you saw my link, was because he's arguing that we need a different model than the Galilean model, which has us, on an Earth that we could step off of and go out into space. Well, we've tried doing that, and guess what? There's not really much opportunity for us to move to another Earth. Find one and move to it? No, probably not going to ever happen. Go ahead.
Okay, and because of to move to another Earth, though, have you heard the theory that we were maybe from Mars?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. My grandmother was from Mars.
Oh,
No, I'm kidding.
What do you think about that? Because there's been a lot of research
Yeah,
lately.
yeah. Yeah, that's pretty neat, actually, thinking about some of that stuff. Meteorite, traveling. My wife loves those. I'm holding, like a little. They're way smaller than that, but those little, something bears. Anybody remember?
Water bears?
A water bear. Yeah.
Tardigrades.
Tardigrade. Yeah. They can travel in space, and when they arrive someplace where there's water, they come back, and then they're ready to. So they're space travelable, these little creatures, and who knows? It's fascinating. I love all that stuff.
Virtually immortal if they are. Unless they're alive, they don't basically die. They kind of just keep on going.
But their social life is terrible. Sorry about that. I'm biased. My wife loves them. In fact, we've bought several varieties of little stuffed animal type, tardigrades. She loves them.
I think the kids have a couple questions on this.
But so when we talk about, who I am, my concept of myself clearly has changed drastically as we look all throughout our history, our history of thought. It's culturally integrated, and peers, who you know, and the way you think, and in fact your identity changes through your life, as you do. I was just a kid, I thought I was a good kid, etc. But then you're a high school student, and oh wow, that's a significant change in your life, etc. But it's not just those personal changes; it's the way the entire society thinks about human life and life in general. Is life significant enough that we ought to protect it, so that we shouldn't have abortion? For example, shouldn't allow it. It's murder, right? Or, no, I've had friends who've, well, let's not go there. You know what I mean, right? There's a contention there. And that's significantly part of the way we view the value of life and us, right? So the first of those three questions that Peter Berger gives us is, who am I? My identity. And then the second is, what is my place in the universe? So how does that relate, right, to all the other aspects of the universe? And then the third one is, how do I maintain that place? So in other words, if I'm a dad, I should do my best to learn the way a father should be, and then act that way. Do my best to act that way. How should I teach? What kind of teacher should I be? Right? I read about new ideas about teaching. Try to incorporate those into the way I teach, etc. Right? But what happens if you suddenly don't believe that any of those stories are true? And that happens when you go through so many different understandings of the Kierkegaard thought this, and then Sartre thought this, and then Bruno Latour thought this, and your mom said this. You can eventually get to the point where, whoa, all of that stuff is just crap. I don't believe any of it. And that sounds pretty wise after seeing so many different things, but the bad thing about it is, now you are no one.
So, in those instances where you have a separation in between your identity, where you're trying to find it, and just have that there's almost none. What typically causes that trigger between like an existential thought and a nihilistic approach? Where you're kind of going through those three truths and trying to find your place in it, and find your idea of identity, or finding out how it is you're supposed to exist in it, versus deciding that everything that does exist within that universe has no meaning at all from what you've gathered, and therefore everything has no meaning, including yourself. So what usually draws that line, I guess?
Well, the existentialist point, for the most part, is to recognize that none of these are true, and it's up to you to pick the story that you are going to use to define yourself. So you make the story that you are going to live by, right? And there's a variety of these, because, do they have to be tied into other people? Nietzsche famously gives us the concept of the Übermensch, the man who's reached this point and now is no longer a sheep, that's just, listening to what other people tell him, but now he's deciding for himself, etc. A nihilist, on the other hand, doesn't believe that will even help, that you can actually choose for yourself. Or you might even find a nihilist who, they used to misread Nietzsche, some people, and they would call themselves Nietzscheans. Madonna is one example. She refers to herself as a Nietzschean, at least at one point in her philosophical career. Madonna, the